Welcome to the Independent Artist Podcast, sponsored by the National Association of Independent Artists.
Also sponsored by Zapplication. I'm Will Armstrong, and I'm a mixed media artist.
I'm Douglas Sigworth, glassblower. Join our conversations with professional working artists.
All right, let's roll. Hello, everybody. Douglas, let's make some product real quick.
Oh, there you go.
Before we get back into the studio to make our art.
Yeah, it's been a long 3 weeks out there on the road, hasn't it?
No, not really.
No? Not for you?
It seems like I just talked to you. It seems like time flies, honestly. You're like, oh, man, we haven't recorded in like 3 weeks. I was like, no, I think that was just last week. Just talked to
No, that
Bill
was
Kidd.
standing in the rain in your booth. That's what it was.
Jesus, there's been a lot of rain. Man, I'm looking at Texas coming up this weekend, and it'll be Monday by the time you guys listen to this, but I'm feeling for everybody going to Cottonwood, too, because it just looks like the only time it's nice in Texas is like Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, or part of the day Thursday, unless there's a setup, in which case you're going to have a storm. But man, it is looking dicey again there in Richardson, Texas. So good luck out there, or good luck drying off at this point.
We're recording before the weekend, and
Right.
You're going to hear it after the weekend, so our whole timeline is a little screwy.
Yeah. Good luck in advance. It's not going to rain. You know what? I was driving to Southlake last week, and I was looking at the weather, and I was getting texts from some good friends. Bonnie Harmston and I were texting back and forth, and I voice text on the road. Yeah. So, get off my back there. I had the whole Apple Play thing through the system, which makes me look like a moron, but
Are you saying because of the misspellings or whatever?
Yeah, punctuation and spellings. They're never quite there. But
yeah, that goes out the window nowadays anyway. So anyway,
yeah, I've been told. Haven't we both been told by our children that it makes us look old when we use periods and commas?
Periods are passive aggressive, is what I've been told.
Yeah, punctuation. I mean, it's not that you weren't being passive aggressive, but just not right then. Right?
There you go.
So I'm looking at the weather going down there, and it just looks like impossible.
That forecast looked pretty dang rough.
Yeah, it looked impossible. It was like, I was communicating with Terry Causey, too, and Terry was like, I'm going. I'm going to go, and I'm going to go to the show, and I'm going to set up, but I'm imagining this moment where I'm texting you back and forth, and we're talking about it, and I'm like, I'm imagining myself in my tent, hanging on for dear life to everything that I hold precious. Just hanging on. I could have turned around. Right then, I could have turned around, but here I am standing there, and dude, it never freaking happened.
Isn't that crazy?
It just never happened.
I've had that happen too a couple of times where it looked like 100% rain. You showed up and it rained at night. Didn't rain during show hours. I mean, you never know.
And it didn't just look like rain. It looked like they were saying, well, sustained winds of 35 miles per hour with 45 mile per hour gusts. And I'm like, that's not tenable. I can't do that. That's not. And it's been a few weeks. I guess it has been, since we talked. So, I mean, I'm thinking about, and back to the Causey family. I was near Scott at Fort Worth, and Scott and his poor wife just kept lugging their stuff back in and then back out. I was like, God damn, Sisyphus. Just back and forth and pushing that boulder back up the hill because the weather was getting bad, and then it would get good again, and it would get bad, and then it would get good again. But
so they were taking their work out of the booth to protect it, you're saying? Or
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
They had where we were in the 800s, they had a nice setup. So they had pre-approved parking with the Hilton that was right there on our block. So their van was super close. And
yeah.
So they could just get it in and out, which made it really nice for those guys. And
totally.
I mean, nice.
Convenient for saving your work in a storm, maybe, but not nice. Not like silver lining or anything. Happy, yeah.
And it didn't, the Fort Worth weather, we lost a day. And, we lost a big day, which is a huge bummer to the show and to us, of course. But, I mean, as far as budgeting goes, and I can't imagine, we've talked to a few directors, and that really takes a bite. All those people not coming on Saturday, not buying food and beer and T-shirts and posters and just being there for the show. obviously it's a huge drag for us, but man.
Well, my bright light in a situation like that is to say, well, it keeps the tire kickers away. But to be honest, sitting through that rain and that cold on Saturday at Main Street, it kept everyone away.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like no attendance. There was nothing going on.
It really did. Well, I made $200.
Did you?
Day. I did. I had somebody come in and buy a couple of reproductions there. And I'm like, well, there's the tab.
Right.
Let's go.
I had somebody actually call me who bought something the day before that wanted to buy another piece, but they didn't want to come out in the rain. So we did this all on my phone. And so Renee was up in the hotel room. We took shifts. And I'm like, hey, look at me making sales in the rain. So
nice.
One sale, not sales.
Yeah. Did you guys stay in that Blackstone right there?
We did this
Marriott?
time. Yeah, that worked out for us this time. Yeah.
Yeah. I really like that. It's right there.
I'm a Bonvoy member too, so I love the points. I love that there's certain times with, the point levels when you check in, if they've got an open upgrade for you, they can bump you up to something nicer, a little more spacious. I like that a lot. Mm-hmm.
That was me too. They bumped me up into a nice corner suite, and I could look down on the road and see how the weather was looking, et cetera. And hey, speaking of how the weather is looking, this cracked me up. I was at Southlake last weekend, and Andrew Saviani, the photographer, he's a great photographer, good friend, super talented guy.
Mm-hmm.
So we dodged all the weather, right? But Saturday night, in the middle of the night, there was, it sounded like a war, like the boom, just like bang, 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 like just sounded like explosions of thunder. And
also, there's a college campus nearby, you're saying, or what?
Yeah. It's just like every few seconds, another just earth-shaking thunder crack. And
damn.
So, all the artists are up at like 4:00 in the morning looking out the windows going, oh my God. But the reason I brought Andrew up is he stopped by my booth and he was like, man, you were tied down tight last night. Everybody was watching you. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, I was set up right in front of City Hall.
Okay.
And there was a camera. And they didn't tell me about it.
Oh.
But people were like checking in and they could see. And they're like, well, there's Armstrong's tent. He's doing pretty good.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Little did you know you were on closed caption recording. I hope you didn't do anything inappropriate when you didn't think anyone was looking.
This was the booth in the middle of the night.
I got that, but I'm talking about other times of the day when that camera's aimed right at you.
I don't know. There was probably some nose picking. Who knows? I don't know. I'm not I try to be. I don't know. Anyway, he was like, man, I was like, somebody could have texted me and told me, but then I would have just had my OCD on and watched it. But
that right.
Man, it was, I got the sexiest weight system for that show. My walls and my artwork and everything are all tied in together, and I have really heavy panels. So my tent without weights is weighted. It's super sturdy and looks like it's not weighted, but it's about as sturdy as it gets. But I stopped at Home Depot and got 6 like super sexy bright orange buckets and a bag of Quikrete for each one, and just left it open. And the more that it rained overnight, the heavier they got. So,
well, here's what I wonder about that technique when I've seen people use the buckets and then they tie off to the handle. I think those handles are like flimsy as shit. So it's
no, they're not.
Really? So you don't think that if the tent starts swaying and it lifts up, it wouldn't just pop those handles right out of the bucket?
No, they're designed to move concrete around.
Oh, I'm thinking you're talking about like those plastic 5-gallon pails.
Yeah, I am. The ones you get at Home Depot. Yeah, just the buckets. Yeah.
All right.
I've done it several times, and they rock steady.
I stand corrected then. I always thought that seemed like the water bottle thing when you say two frozen water bottles has a weight.
They were frozen. No, they were great. I had some wind and I had some, the rains and stuff came in and no, I've used those several times. So yeah.
We looked out at Jazz Fest for rain. We didn't have any storms or anything, but we had some sustained winds on Saturday and Sunday that were brutal and aimed right at us. Luckily, our booth was pretty dang secure, but I felt awful for our neighbor, Gina Panorfi. She's a fiber artist. And So her racks of her garments were just blowing like crazy, and it turned into one of those all hands on deck. All the artists, neighbor friends running over, helping pick stuff up, and she had plenty of weight, but it's kind of the same idea with when you do the hanging pendulum weights, and if you don't secure them to the leg, the garments are swinging, and they just were taking the whole racks over. So that was something to be dealt with for pretty much all of Saturday and Sunday. It was a nightmare.
Yeah, what do you do there? I'm thinking about like Thomas Spake was my neighbor in Des Moines one year when we had a lot of wind. We were on a windy corner, and he has this, that kind of waxy stuff that keeps all the vessels down.
Yeah, museum gel or wax.
Yeah. Exactly. So he had that. He was rock steady. But what do you do with garments? Man, that's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, they did come up with a good method. She had to pull a lot of her stuff, thin out her booth. But yeah, it was not easy. That's for sure.
That's a drag.
Yeah.
So on Saturday night when that storm came through, I was super proud of our tribe. Like everybody like battened down their shit. Like we took care of business, and no artists that I heard of lost anything at all. And that monster storm and the winds and everything, we were all ready for it. But the only tent that went down, the cops, they brought an unweighted easy up and folded it, just picked it up, looked like a dead spider when it was done. So we were like, come on, protect and serve. Weight your shit, buddy.
Did it turn into a projectile? Did it fly into anything, or was it just go down?
No, I think it took on water and then collapsed.
Yeah.
Like it does, just popped like a big water balloon.
Yeah.
You got to watch those things. Hula hoops,
and those, what are those noodles, those floaty noodles?
Yeah. float noodles or hula hoops. That's how you keep your easy up from popping like a water balloon.
Well, I guess what's a little bit different between our experiences the last few weeks here is you were able to kind of zip home, zip back. I mean, it's a lot to be on the road that much, but we were on the road solid. Yeah, basically left almost 3 weeks to the day out on the road, and that tour, that was a little too much for me. I mean,
really,
yeah, I just felt like by the time we got home, I was like homesick and just like ready to get back to our routine. But let's face it, I had 5 months of being a homebody, and so maybe it was just like getting acclimated to being out on the world again. So I don't know, it was good. It was fine.
Did you have decent shows or no?
It's a little bit of like an up and down. I felt like I really rode that roller coaster, and part of it I feel like was because having 5 months off the road, it just felt like there was so much pressure to start making money. It's like everything was just, we were riding on fumes. We had exhausted our budget for what we needed to take time off. And if you don't have that immediate kind of reaction, it's hard for me anyway, not to just get to panic mode. And that's nothing more of a turnoff for collectors if they start to see you doing the panic sell.
Right. Yeah, I was the same way. It took me a long time at Main Street to actually sell my first big original, and I sold a brand new big monster piece, and that I was really happy to do that. And I had actually talked to a lot of people that I'm going to sell to later, but that doesn't really help the bank book now. I've got a lot of really solid leads that I can follow up on now, but man, it is tough, and it's like, man, it did just to shake it off of you. But I do feel like I was talking to my neighbor. This was kind of funny, and I was like, well, how's kind of gauging, because I knew my next door neighbor had a really bad weekend, and then the one on the other side looked like they'd been busy. So I was like, you guys, have you been here before? Are you down, or how's it looking? And they were like, he was like, well, we are down. And his wife kind of looked at him. He's like, we're at about 91% of our. I was like, that's not fucking down.
That's not down. That's like one decent sale. So come on.
Not even it. I don't even know. I was like 91%. Shut the fuck up. That's okay. You're the great hope here. That's not. You're not down. That's all right. You're still hitting it. So
there you go.
Fine.
Well, man.
But yeah, a really sweet couple. They have not a new baby, but probably maybe a year old.
Sure.
And he had just learned to scream. which was worrisome. It's set up, but you've had kids at shows, you've had babies at shows, and they're just everybody's like, look, you can't ask the baby not to scream.
Right.
And they were
Excuse me, Junior, would you just kind of pipe down a little bit?
Yeah.
No, not happening.
Strap them kids in, give them a little bit of Benadryl and a cherry Coke. We're going to Oklahoma.
That's funny, though. I mean, I did have a number of collectors over the years when our kids were being wild joke about the whole Benadryl thing, that give your kid a little dose of Benadryl, that'll calm them down going on trips or whatever. I'm like, I don't think I want to do that.
No, that's an old James McMurtry line. Choctaw bingo. Oh. He has another verse where it's like, strap them kids and give them a little bit of vodka. No, don't do that, folks. We're not it's not a parenting podcast.
Yeah.
Oh,
but you were talking about solid leads, and I feel like that was something the last 2 weekends that we experienced a lot of. I had so many good conversations about big projects that sounded really promising. Yep, so humble brag there. But the part that was kind of difficult was I usually feel like after a show, I can look at my notes and I can remember the 3 to 5 solid leads, you know what I'm saying? That you can visualize them. You visualize the conversation you had. Well, I'm going back to my list, which was quite a sizable list. And honestly, I'm drawing a blank. I'm concerned, actually, like I'm going to lose out on the ability to follow up. So I'm going to have to do my check back ins as a little vague, I think, because it was just so many people at both of these shows. They're just so many bodies, coming through, asking from the mundane to the serious. And how do you remember all that stuff?
Yeah, I'm king of the vague email.
Oh, yeah?
Be like, thank you again for your response to my work. I loved talking to you. Wondering if we could circle back about your space.
Here, hold on a second.
I don't know.
Hold on, Will. Okay, I got that. That's what I'm stealing that from you, man.
Yeah, right. Type that in. Yeah, good. No, I'm the king of that, and I'm also king of the delayed. I have this imaginary shipper for my custom work. Oh. I'm like, well, I don't know. Typically I hear back from my shipper at this point. Let me go back and see. Meanwhile, the painting is half done. And they'll buy me another day. I'm working on a hard one right now. It was supposed to go out on Tuesday, and then the kids needed stuff, and I'm driving around and.
You're not getting it done right now, are you?
No. Talking to Douglas.
There you go.
Like, Susie's like, don't you have a lot to do? I'm like, yeah.
We do.
A lot to do. Gonna go be super entertaining.
It's like, okay, is this podcast wrapped up yet? Are we done with this episode?
Yeah, exactly.
Hang tight. We'll be right back. This episode of the Independent Artist Podcast is brought to you by Zap, the digital application service where artists and art festivals connect.
Look, Douglas, I like having all of my shows that I've applied for in one place, and that's why I kind of prefer to use Zap, because Zap is the standard in our industry.
And I tend to do things a little bit last minute, so I like to save all the shows I like to do as favorites, so then I can go back in and sort them by application deadline so I never miss out.
When I get rejected from a show or waitlisted to a show that I was counting on and I need to panic apply, I reach for Zapplication. I can go through and scroll through an entire area and over-apply to 7 different things after I've had a couple of glasses of wine.
Thanks, Zap, for allowing us a backup plan.
My daughter, I posted on Facebook. She actually posted for the first time. She didn't have a Facebook account, and she posted on mine. She's going to this Amigos program, and I was super touched by all of the outpouring of support for her going to this amazing trip to Panama. She's doing a 3-week kind of half volunteer learning, full Spanish immersion, staying with a host family, working on an organic farm, learning about the rainforest. We just got her itinerary this morning, and she's over the moon. It's amazing to see your kids this excited. So
that's true, especially at this age. It seems like there's so little that they get so enthused about it. And to get enthused about something like that, which is just learning and being a good citizen and a good human, I love that she's behind that.
Yeah, and she found that program on her own, and it is, and I'm nervous as hell sending my kid away to Panama for 3 weeks. But the program is really, really cool, and she's going to be, like the different tour, like a tour of the rainforest, and then go down to this coffee farm, and then learn about sustainable practices and keeping the soil rich and rotating crops and all this really stuff. But the art show related, I have to send a huge thank you to the folks that helped donate. I did post that on my personal page and then my art page, and had a nice outpouring of support from some really good friends here on the art show circuit. So thank you to you and Renee and a lot of other folks too. I'm going to send out our thing. I'll send out my thank you notes because they were friends of mine. They don't really know Ada.
Yeah.
But, at the same time, she's going to send her thank yous too.
That's cool. And we do have that link on the independent artist page too. So on Facebook, if anybody would like to add to the list or add to the contributions for that fund, please go on our Facebook page, find that, and that's how you can get your way into that.
And you can learn about that Amigos program because
super cool. Yeah.
We've already paid for her to go, and this donation is to the actual. It's for her to go and for her to. They have a fundraising goal for each one of them for the whole program too, which helps the group go as well. So that's to pay for the group.
I was wondering about that, if it was to help cover her experience, or if it was like a pay it forward to the organization kind of thing. So
it's a requirement for each student that goes to raise money. So they do a fundraiser. Mm-hmm. So in order for them to qualify to go, they have to raise money for the program, which pays for the community, and it goes directly towards the things that they're going to be doing.
Nice.
So both. It really is both.
Cool. Well, lucky Ada's got such a famous father who out there and drawing all these reactions.
Seriously, did say, I was like, she called me on Sunday night and I had broken down the show, Southlake in Texas, and having a drink with a couple of friends. And I got a call, and it's like 10 o'clock at night. I'm like, oh, crap. So I grabbed the phone real quick. And, she had not done the fundraising thing, and she was behind the ball. And she had a huge school project, this huge 20-page paper, and this year-long project that came to fruition while everybody else was doing the fundraising. And she had not dropped the ball, but she only had like 10 days left to do the fundraising.
Oh, okay.
And I'm like, look, I was talking her through it, and I'm like, man, if there's anybody that can raise $2,000 in a week, it's your dad. We got
He's your guy.
I'm your guy. I was like, if there's anything I can do, I'm like, if I'm hanging by the thread of my back pant pocket, I'm going to take care of this. So
we're circling back to the whole tent thing, hanging on to the tent and everything, dear for life, and same deal here, right?
Yeah, that's it, man. I don't know. I don't want to teach them a lesson, but at the same time, a little confidence in yourself is a good thing, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So speaking of having a drink with friends at the very end of the show when it's all over, I'm not sure there's any sweeter beer than the one that you have within show site after you're broken down and everyone else is still working. It's like there's the cutting the grass. You've cut the grass beer. There's a long day, sweaty, taking a shower, and there's the shower beer.
Okay.
Then there's the after the show with the sweet sounds of pipes hitting the ground, of tents being broken down.
There you go.
Clang, clang, clang. Oh,
that's the pre-bar beer.
No, it's in the bar. It's in the place. You're at the patio, and they're still breaking down the show. And that's the thing.
Oh, are you saying when the show is done, period, not just the end of the day?
No, the show is over. You're loaded out.
Gotcha. That would be the sweetest thing ever.
That's the sweetest, the best burger, the best whatever. You're just like, I'm done.
And they're
it's
not.
Over. Clang, clang, clang. Pong, 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 pong. Oh, it's the sweet music to my ears.
Wow. Well, hey, I was thinking about this. Sometimes at the end of a show, you walk into a bar or a restaurant, you see your friends sitting there. This year, since I've been on my health kick and rehab with my ankle and stuff, my new place to run into people is first thing in the morning before the show in the hotel gym. That has become the Art Fair Buddy hangout. So,
wow!
Shout out to Diane Hardy. We saw her a few times in the Blackstone in Fort Worth doing her workouts while we were doing our workouts. And
I don't see how you do it, man. I do notice if I'm taking better care of myself when I'm working out that setting up and breaking down goes a little bit easier on the body. But I mean, with those long days,
it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah, getting up and taking care of yourself. Well, good for you. I'm not doing that.
Yeah, I know you're not. I didn't see you anywhere near that workout room, Will.
I must have missed you.
You just left.
That's right. That's right. I was swimming my laps. Well, again, talking about these kind of shows like the last one that I did where the show takes place around a square. It kind of reminded me a little bit of like a Winter Park.
Oh.
Where instead of it being like a long road like Winter Park and then the park is behind you, this was a square where you're set up all the way around. So people are on the road, double deep, and then they have a really nice winding path throughout the park. Mm-hmm. And I feel like there's a responsibility as being on the street that you need to get the hell out of the way. So that was part of the reason that I was just like scrambling to like take down. I had a big booth and a lot of work and I had to get out of there. And I got a tip for you.
Yeah.
If you're interested. And it's not in every city, but they are pretty much in Texas, and they don't have them in Santa Fe, unfortunately. But you can hire people through this app called TaskRabbit.
TaskRabbit. Okay.
TaskRabbit.
Nice.
Yeah. And the last couple of Texas shows I've hired guys to help me move through that as just movers. And then once you've hired the mover, you've logged them in and you're like, okay, here's the real deal. And you can send them a message. And like the real deal is we're going to be setting up an art show booth. You're not going to be moving furniture. I just need you to be there and I'll instruct you. And I felt like I had to have that or an extra set of hands setting up the tent, because if we'd had the wind that they were threatening, that we did have occasionally there, just that extra set of hands when you detach your weights,
Sure. Or even like taking down your panels. If a gust comes, you could really tear a rotator cuff or something, just taking your panels down.
Yeah. Or it knocks into your neighbor's stuff.
That's smart. That's really cool. I didn't know about TaskRabbit.
So, yeah, I hired a dude named Thor. I'm like, well, there's Thor.
Was he everything Thor would envision? Like a tall Viking or something?
Nah, he was a little odd. He was kind of a slob, which was a drag. Like, he was kind of like, you're taking away the tent parts. And I'm like, okay, and we all have a ring. I don't know what we call it. Like, I call the things that attach the rings that you put through the parts in the craft hut, I call them D-rings. And then the little things that you put to attach the extenders on your pro panels, I call them bullets. It's just like we have our own language.
Right,
so I'm like,
vernacular,
So I'm like, stack the D-rings here. And he's just like kind of dropping them and leaving them all over the place. And I'm like, you can't do that. You got to put them in the bag every time. Yeah. Or I'm going to be screwed when I set this thing up again.
For the 5 that get kicked and go down the sewer drain, then you don't have them. It's like, yeah.
But also I was like, I didn't have enough room to carry. This is lame, but I didn't have enough room to carry the buckets home. So I'm like, Thor, deal with these buckets.
Yeah.
It's
find a
just
dumpster.
Nice to have I got a guy, you know?
That's right.
Here. Do the thing. Go do the thing.
Speaking of a helpful app, I discovered this at Main Street. I've known that Instacart existed for years, okay? It's just never something I've ever used. But we were starting to run out of some of the foods that we wanted in Fort Worth. And the thought of like driving out of the city to get to a grocery store to come back into the congested city just seemed like a nightmare. Until I remembered Road Mom last year. She told a story about Instacarting a case of wine to her hotel. I'm like, well, I can Instacart some provisions to our hotel as well. And that saved our ass in Fort Worth. So Instacart worked out great.
That's awesome. Just because you probably didn't think about it because you weren't thinking about like, well, I don't want a case of wine.
Yeah, there you go.
Thanks.
Ma.
How about some, like, wait a minute, hummus and grapes.
Yeah, hard-boiled eggs. Yep. Check.
Heck yeah. Right. Man, I love hard-boiled eggs at a show. That's a great call.
Definitely. So that worked out good. It's kind of fun. Got to meet some new neighbors on this trip out. Artists I have never met before. Have some good conversations. I'm not going to bring this neighbor's name up because I don't know if I have permission to talk about this particular conversation. But we were talking about, in response to some of the podcast conversations that we've had with guests, about the issue about when something crosses the line in their mind from being a handmade original piece of artwork versus using automation or industry or technology to produce the work, Like some artists have talked about using CAD or 3D printing, and that their thoughts are that the creativity is in the idea or in the design, and the execution of it, how you do it, is not up for debate. Carol Swayze is going to have a completely different opinion on that. So I don't know.
Yeah,
what are your thoughts
She's
on
got
that?
a hard line.
Yeah,
Carol's got
line.
a super hard line. And I feel like AI has opened up so many abilities for people to cheat now that it makes me insane.
It really does. It's like when you can just put a word or a sentence in and then something gets generated out of that. That is clearly AI bullshit.
Now, what would be your opinion if I took 12 of my paintings, scanned them in, and then, used that as a thing to say, okay, now create this?
It's making my head spin because I think
it makes me furious. Yeah. I hate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because could somebody just buy your work or buy prints of your work and then reproduce
or go to my website and be
Armstrong-esque work?
Right. And be like, I want this lady in Paris. Mm-hmm. And then she's in Paris and she's doing that. And I don't know. The fact that AI has been created to, it's all but completely replaced illustration for media, and that they don't have to pay illustrators anymore. The fact that they've created AI to replace certain parts of the arts, it's unconscionable. It's not replacing McDonald's workers. It's not replacing, it's not making laundry easier. It's not making the dishes go away. It's replacing illustrators and photographers. It's just a huge fuck you to talented people. I've mentioned that thing about Nick Cave, the songwriter, and he has a great response to that. It takes away all of the what it means, the heart and soul of what it means to be an actual artist and creator. And the fact that it has cheaters too. Cheaters are cheaters, and they're going to be out there. The price of being a cheater is that you don't get to have any friends. You don't get to be honest.
Right.
About what you're doing and creating. You got to go to dinner by yourself. It takes away the fun of what we do for a living. But if you're making a lot of money,
maybe they don't care. Maybe the money is their friend,
I think they care eventually. I know they're laughing to the bank at 2 or 3 different shows, and until people catch on to them. But then I think the industry catches up to those folks, and they don't get to have any friends, and they don't get to have a good time. It's none of my fucking business. If I'm set up next to somebody, I don't want to be, director, they did a wrong thing and I didn't like it. I don't want to be that guy. No. But at the same time, who else is going to police it?
Well, somebody recently pointed out a cheater out there. Well, not a cheater, but let's say a copycat. And I know our work is supposed to be original when we apply. It's our own original stuff, but it's like a direct copy. I don't want to get them or myself or anyone in trouble for talking about it, but I will have to say it's kind of been rattling around my head for the last few weeks, like what you just said. I don't want to be the one who's like, director, I don't want to be calling them out. I don't want to be living there, but it's still, I can't shake it, that feeling of like it's unfair or not right,
Yeah. We work really hard to create new work and not be, new original ideas and I don't know. It's just a drag.
It is. It's shitty, but I guess, like you said, it's best to just let it go, move on, let karma,
or we just take them out back and whip them with a rubber hose.
Yeah, I don't know.
No violence.
No.
Violence is wrong. That's assault. You'll go to jail. Don't go to jail.
But I think we sometimes feel like it's hard not to feel like it's somehow taking money out of other people's pockets, So that's kind of where the injustice feels like.
Copycats, don't do that. We don't create work in a bubble.
No.
But at the same time, sometimes you come up with an idea and you're in love with it and you are moving forward and you notice that somebody else who also is creating their work on their own is doing something similar.
Sure. I mean, we've talked about the idea of universal thought in the past. Like there's ideas out there that multiple people can kind of latch onto and have a similar look, coming by it honestly. At least, you know what I mean? If you know that you came by it honestly or they came by it honestly, then it's not like a direct attempt at saying, ooh, I want to steal that and I want to make money off of it because that's a better idea than what I could have come up with. You know, that's a whole different
right. Who's the author of Eat, Pray, Love?
Oh,
is it Higginbotham maybe?
No.
Elizabeth Gilbert. That's what it was.
Right.
Elizabeth Gilbert makes the point, if you come up with an idea, there are just ideas out there. And she had the rough outline for a novel that she was going to write, and somebody else wrote it. You know, it's like the idea didn't belong to her anymore. She just is what she believed, that it was just out there. So sometimes there are ideas that are just out there and that people are doing.
Well, speaking of ideas that were out there, you and I, we had this whole bit planned where we were going to do like this award ceremony, giving awards to our favorite shows, the shows we saw the most at. And
we weren't.
Just teasing.
No, we weren't. We were never going to do that. But I did find that to be one of the more entertaining Evan Reinheimer videos out there. So if you folks are wanting some more artistic content, art content, Evan does a nice video series. So that was enjoyable. What do you think about that?
I thought it was interesting. My whole point in using that as a segue, it was kind of a not funny segue, but it really was about my reaction was, oh my God, why is he telling everybody what his best show was? And why is he telling everybody how many pieces he sold at this show? And because, you know, there are some things that we as artists want to kind of keep like as our own special, like secret.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's never a secret what the kind of the big ones are. But at the same time, I'm like, have fun getting in that one again there, buddy.
There you go. You're not,
you know, like we all know who our competitors are. I typically find that I hang in the same homes as people that I used to think of as competitors. Yeah. But there's really not. But I could see people, you know, if his work is similar to X, Y, and Z, those people are going after his shows. Have fun getting in it.
But the whole thing of secrets made me think of something, because we're in such a different time. You know, now we're at the time in the age with technology, on our website, we want everyone to know what shows we're going to be at, so we have a schedule. On our social media, we want to post, we're at a show. We want people, we could get some organic reach to come and see us at that show. So there's that. But I was talking at Jazz Fest, I was talking to Duke Clausen. He was there with his daughter, Brenna. She was showing her jewelry, really great work. And Duke said, you know, Jazz Fest used to be the best kept secret back before they started having their applications on Zap. He was talking about a time when Bob Briscoe, ceramics artist from back then, said, hey, Duke, I'm going to tell you a little secret, but if you tell anybody my secret, I'm going to have to kill you. And that is that Jazz Fest has this small little contemporary crafts section. This is before it is what it is now. And he says, believe me, if you go and you get in, you're not going to be sorry. And so that's when Duke and Ladess, they did that for years. And so I'm thinking, God, you know, that time frame of like the secret little show that nobody knows about, it doesn't exist anymore. You know what I mean? Or does it?
Fuck you, I got one. I'm not talking about it.
Okay.
I'm not
Mum's the word.
Yeah. Well, you're sitting there bringing up Duke Clausen and the secret show. I don't know that it's secret anymore if you're wearing a very lovely Jazz Fest t-shirt there, my friend. That is sharp.
Out, baby.
Yeah, looking good.
Time to dish a little pros and cons of Jazz Fest this week. It was quite an interesting time.
Right on. Cons? I've never heard cons. Actually, here's one for you, and I don't think this is Jazz Fest's fault necessarily. I think it's probably the Stones. Okay. But did you hear this? You weren't there for Stones weekend, but
I know. I was going to talk about the Stones situation. I know all about it.
The artists were not allowed to hear them.
No, they were. So here's how it worked. they couldn't see them performing live on stage. They could watch them live on a different stage on the big screens. So this was something that Jazz Fest has never done before. And that was, and I believe this might have been the arrangement with the Stones the first time when they had to cancel. And that was, they were going to be shutting down all the stages other than the Stones stage.
Okay.
Like they wanted to be the only artist performing at that time slot. So all the stages were closed down. They limited the amount of tickets that they would take for that day. So it was just enough that they could fill the main festival stage where the Stones were going to perform. And at first, I know the artists were like super happy. Yay, we got in the Stones weekend because I get to see the Stones. And then they were like, oh my God, I don't get to see the Stones because the show is going to make us close our booths down before the performance and leave. Well, it wasn't, that part was wrong. They didn't have to leave, but they could watch it. And any of the staff, anyone who volunteered or worked for the show, they could watch it, but they couldn't watch it on the main stage. They had to go find one of the abandoned stages, like the Congo stage or the Shell Gentili stage, and watch it on the big screens. So they did get to still go experience it.
Okay. Interesting. Well, if you have cheap seats, that's how you're watching them anyway.
Right. For sure.
Right. When you're at guess who doesn't have cheap seats? Your boy. I'm going to see him in Glendale.
Nice.
This coming Tuesday. We're in the pit.
Wait, this Tuesday?
When did you say? The Tuesday after this comes out.
Oh my God, amazing. You are going to be like on cloud nine. You're going to be.
I am a little like, I always promised myself if I'm ever in a place, like when I saw them when I was at 18, and I'm like, man, if I'm ever in a place, I'm looking down at all these people in the front. I'm like, man, if I could ever get down there, I felt like I could never get close enough. And so these tickets, and I was telling my buddies, because they were expensive, but they weren't like, Taylor Swift expensive.
Okay.
And I'm like, I'm looking at the tickets for down the front. I'm like, they're expensive, but they're not that expensive. Holy crap. So I grabbed a couple for me and my wife at the pit.
Yeah.
And I'm like, because most people want a chair. And if you're down on the front, you're not typically going to sit in it anyway. So just get it out of the way and put me in a little area.
Yeah.
So we're down there, and I texted my buddy. He's in Manhattan, and he and I grew up being like just rabid about the Stones. And I'm like, they're not that bad. Yeah. Like the tickets are not that bad. You can grab a pit ticket for like $400 or $500.
Wow. And
I'm like, I mean, it's expensive, but it's not.
Not going to kill you.
It's not untenable. Right. And so he was like, holy shit, that's awesome. And so he goes on, let me just tell you, Manhattan prices are not Glendale, Arizona's prices. So, yeah, he was like, yeah, they're like 3,000 to 5,000 in Manhattan pit.
Wow.
Like, can you imagine the differences? And they haven't even sold out. It's like that Scottsdale area. It's wherever is it the Arizona Cardinals that play football?
Okay.
It is, right? They didn't change their name. Yeah, it's the Cardinal. Okay. Anyway, they play in the Cardinals stadium, and so it's the big football stadium there, but man, I'm psyched.
Well, I heard from some patrons or festival attendees at Jazz Fest that they were disappointed that they couldn't get the next weekend. And I said, well, what do you mean? What happened? And I wanted details. They really wanted to be there for the Stones. And they said, well, the Stones sold out pretty quickly. First, they opened it up to Louisiana only for Jazz Fest. And then after that time frame passed, they opened it up to the nation. It was gone probably within an hour maybe. And I thought, oh, the tickets must have been super expensive. And apparently for the one day to see the Stones was like $225. So
okay,
that
for everything else you get.
Right. You get the whole rest of the day too with all the other acts and stuff. So that was pretty cool to hear kind of the behind the scenes with that.
The thing I like about that show, and my wife has shown a couple of times, that is that is the show I've never been able to crack. I've never gotten in. And
I don't get it, because your work is like perfect for that festival.
Not perfect for the jury. Yeah. It's just, I looked at it. There are a lot of things kind of going against you, and I'm looking at some of the 2D that has gotten in, and I'm like, well, I'm not cutting them to let me in.
Mhm.
I'm not cutting Beth Bajorski out and putting me in. I'm not cutting. I don't know. I'm just saying I'd like it. I'd like to get a little sniff.
Yeah.
But the point being, I've been and I've shown, I've sold there with my wife there and helped sell jewelry. And I just love the experience of, setting up under their tent and setting up your thing. And then the fact that it's over at 6 or 7 o'clock, and then it becomes a neighborhood party, and you walk back out through the neighborhood, and there are all these people having these porch parties, and it's just so fun. And it's a whole citywide neighborhood event. And it may be an international music festival, but it's just so cool.
You know what, that neighborhood thing that you're talking about, you've said that before, and I've understood it and got it, but never so much as I've really get it this year. When we're driving out every single night, they've got cops directing foot traffic, directing vehicle traffic through those main gates and whatever. But once you get within that block, you've got a sea of people. I mean, there's like 50 to 100,000 people every day at that show.
Right.
They can't fit on the sidewalks because it's like cattle trying to get to their vehicles. So you are driving your big art fair van through a street that's filled with people. And it's like, it's a little terrifying. Like, you don't want to run over somebody's foot and people aren't thinking. They don't even know you're there. They look and they give you the shocked look like, oh, when did this big truck show up behind me? It snuck up on me.
Yeah, but it's friendly, though. It all just seems to be kind of like, I don't know. I like that feel that New Orleans has. It's like no other city in the world. And the fact that people, a lot of them are just kind of walking back to their houses.
Yeah. It is amazing. Okay, so I alluded to the that there might be some cons amid all these pros we've just talked about.
Sure, take a dump.
Well, speaking of dump, the sanitation leaves much to be desired at that show. I don't know if it's been like this forever, but so they've got a bunch of the trailers, the air-conditioned trailers throughout. And you think, oh, that's nice. We do plenty of art shows where they've got men's side, women's side. Did you know that these air-conditioned trailers are just for the ladies?
Huh.
Us disgusting animals, we get to we get what we deserve. Let's just say that, okay?
Yep.
We basically get what we deserve.
Get in that hot plastic bucket. Get in there. That's for you. Get in there.
And when you remove women from the equation of using those porta potties, they get extra nasty, let's just say.
Yeah. So. That's well, you know what?
I don't know that there's anything to be said on that, Will. I see you looking up and to the left, trying to...
Yeah, I'm moving on. Let's look at our notes here. I got nothing. I don't.
But then there's one other point to that. So if you're not making money at Jazz Fest selling your art, the second job to have at Jazz Fest, it's the lady working in those trailers who are letting the line know who can come in next, because just about everybody leaves them $1 every time they walk through. And those lines go on forever. They have to be making tips for days. I mean, that is a pretty good revenue stream.
Yeah, you go ahead and keep that job there. I don't want your duty dollar. All right, let's move on. I'm going to figure out a different way.
Okay.
Let's see. We talked before in the past, Douglas, about sometimes we're working for the show and sometimes the show is working for you. And I think a lot of these longer hours, it's like, well, now I'm logging hours for the show and my sales have kind of dried up, and it's now people are just kind of walking around and having a nice glass of wine and enjoying. Some people are still selling, but typically you're just kind of there for the background entertainment.
Right.
And I started looking at that as I've gotten into like these longer drives since I moved out west, and I found that like the last 100 miles is nothing, and I start to look forward to the last 100 miles. And now I'm kind of getting to the point where I'm like, wow, I'm almost to the point where like the last 200 miles I can dissect that into increments of shit I listen to, and like, if I listen to this podcast or this, I'm going to listen to 2 chapters of this book this record, this podcast, that's 100 miles.
And that gets you home, right? Or
and it gets you home
to the show or whatever.
Yeah. And I started, and I accidentally looked at my phone and saw that we had like 2.5 hours left. And I was like, oh, sweet. I only have like 200 miles left in this show. It's like, well, I'm going till 9. I'm like, I still got 200 miles.
Oh, so even at the end of your show day, you're starting to correlate that into that as well.
Just now. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I started looking. I was like 6 o'clock and I had to go till 9. I'm like, man, I still got 200 miles left to drive. I'm like, wait a minute. No, I don't. So I don't know. Everything's blurring in together for me.
It's funny. I do the same thing because, we live just outside of the Twin Cities. And I always think of it as like, oh, well, that's just driving home from Minneapolis. We go to Minneapolis all the time. So we're going to be there in no time. You know what I mean? Or and now we're this close or that close. So, and that usually can give me that last minute little perk up, where I'm not feeling like it's never ending.
Right. Or I cut it into segments. Like as soon as I cross into New Mexico, and then the time goes back an hour, you gain that extra hour. And then you're driving through you're going up the mountain and it's like, that's the last 100 miles and it's really pretty. And typically it's, the way I time it's sunset. So that happens for hours and it seems like nothing. But like cattle farms of Texas, that 200 miles, where it's nothing but poor downtrodden animals being abused and shit for like 200 miles. I don't like that. That's not a good 200 miles.
No.
Like I'm not gonna have that.
No.
Kind of.
Yuck.
Yeah, that's kind of reminds me of the New Orleans porta potty. There's your segue.
There's our circle back.
Yep, that's our recall.
A recall. Hey, art fair news. We heard recently that a show that's been near and dear to my heart for a long time, the Uptown Art Fair in Minneapolis, it's actually canceled for this year. You saw that, right?
Yeah, I did see that, and I've got fond memories of that one as well. It's had kind of ups and downs, and the neighborhood is going through kind of a rebuild, and quick. Minneapolis is recovering from a lot of the COVID into there was a lot of. Is that where George Floyd was murdered?
Well, not in Uptown, but maybe a mile from there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of throw a rock. But man, so a lot of the protests kind of centered around there and had a massive effect on the neighborhood. But it's kind of coming back, and I get it. It's a drag. Too bad they couldn't do something, to maybe just put it in the park or do something. But I understand it.
I mean, the merchants have been against it since the beginning of time. But
the show.
Oh, yeah. I mean, remember Cindy Lyric talking about that our first season. But I was unclear. Maybe they're trying to keep it open-ended. It wasn't unclear if it was due to construction for just this year or if it's like a permanent. I mean, sometimes things like that, they make a change and then it's kind of like a slide into not coming back again. So I'm not exactly sure what's happening with it, even though I feel like I should since it's kind of like a local show for us. Right.
Yeah, that sounds kind of familiar too. I remember talking to Amy Curley and Tara at Cherry Creek about how hard it was to they just work so freaking hard on trying to get that neighborhood to work with them. And they do an excellent job of working around different requirements every year. But I don't know. I can't imagine a neighborhood hating. I don't think that neighborhood hates the show at all in Cherry Creek. But if the Uptown people hate it.
Well, the merchants, not the people who live there. The merchants feel like they're losing out on business. I mean, I think the idea is to bring money into the neighborhood year round. So maybe they lose out on a weekend, but it's like, oh, this store is here. Oh, I forgot about that. Oh, we should eat here more often. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. It's like advertising for the area, but
you would think so. And you'd think that, I don't know. You ever done a show where they let the merchants do their own thing too, and they kind of had gaps, and then there's like part of the show, and then a sidewalk sale, and then part of the show, and then
it's called Ann Arbor.
Oh, yeah, that is. That's.
But back to Uptown. The thing about Uptown that is so special to us is, I think I've told this way back when we started, but that was me and Renee's very first date. We weren't even artists planning on being art show artists. We went to the Uptown Art Fair as our very first date. And then there were years we couldn't get into the Uptown Art Fair, and it seemed like we aspired to do it. And then when we would get into the Uptown Art Fair, it started turning into like, this is our anniversary of when we met and the first thing we ever did. So it's such a special place for us. And so it's hard to see that go away.
When I first started dating Susie, I was doing that show, and there'd be this like group of women that were all kind of, they'd all kind of like, they'd walk past and they're all like looking in the booth and they're all kind of whispering and pointing. I'm like, I bet you anything they're friends of hers. And they were like, yep. And then they'd come back and then they'd introduce them. I did kind of see, they'd check me out.
Right.
And then her family too. That's where I first met her family too. They came by and met her mom and dad and all this stuff when we were first dating. So yeah, special memories there. And
meeting your future in-laws at a show, that sounds like it could be a good thing, maybe a stressful thing. I don't know.
Yeah, very stressful. So
yeah,
I don't know. Man, we are getting ready to get back out on the road again. We're going to pack up Santa Fe and move up to your neck of the woods up there in Minnesota.
Cool.
We're going to move up there again.
I was wondering if you guys were planning to do that again this year.
Yeah, kind of May 20th. There's a huge Lit Fest, literary festival that we're going to go to this year, where a lot of authors that we both have read are going to be speaking. It was super fun.
Nice.
My wife went to it last year and saw a couple, and so we made plans to do a big thing for it this year. So we're looking forward to that.
Oh, cool.
And then back on up to Minnesota.
All right. Hey, I was wondering, when I was getting ready for the last show, this kind of came to mind. It's like, do you have, and this isn't related to our booth or inventory or anything like that, but when you travel, are there like certain things that you just need to have with you on the road that you make sure you pack?
Yeah, I am the guy. I no longer do the pillow. I'm actually okay with hotel pillows these days, but I carry a huge box fan everywhere I go, and just knock out the just white noise it. And the white noise on my phone does not work. I want that fan noise. So I carry just a really shitty big box plastic fan that
it's just
knocks out all the
sound to help you sleep.
Yeah, it knocks out. I feel like I typically wake up as soon as the first person wakes up in the hotel and slams that first, and I don't know why the hotel doors don't have a sealant that makes them shut quietly.
Yeah.
But as soon as that first door shuts like a guillotine, I'm awake. And it could be like somebody catching a 4:30 flight or 5 o'clock. But yeah, that's my big
sounds like
Linus
the Law and
blanket.
Order jail cell slamming with hotel doors shut.
Yeah, definitely. How about you?
Well, I love espresso. I like to have Americanos. And so I'll just go to, Starbucks. But years ago, somebody had turned me on to this thing called AeroPress. And it's a non-mechanized. It doesn't plug in. It's like a plunger, not a French press.
French press.
It's kind of, but it's not. It makes you espressos. Anyway, I started traveling with that again. I'm like, I cannot live without this. I mean, I can do this if I stop in Hodunk, USA, and I don't have to worry about getting my, I can't do the hotel coffee. I just can't. It's like,
yeah, it's always gross.
But I need that. I absolutely need that.
Is there anything worse than Rainforest? Whatever that blend is, where they're like the plastic cup, and it's like, Rainforest. It's like, it's not the rainforest. There's nothing from the rainforest here.
No.
And all it reminds, and it's in a plastic thing in a foil bag, and you throw all the shit away, and you're like, well, if you like the rainforest at all, you don't like this crap.
Right.
So yeah,
it's like
the
drinking
hotel
perfume at that point.
Yeah, it's just mud. It's just dirty water.
Yeah. But like I know Julia Gilmore, she was telling us how she will actually make sure she's got the tiniest little, maybe it's a Transit Connect, but the tiniest little van. And when she leaves for a season, she's got special beer that she gets from her neighborhood, wherever it's made up in the mountains of New Hampshire, wherever she's at. And she's like, she can't get that on the road. So that has a valued spot in her van or in her truck.
Yeah, I get that. Jason Breck brings, he always brings around like a really delicious IPA.
Okay.
In spite of the fact that I was his neighbor in Greenville, and I had bought a 6-pack. I don't drink during the shows anymore. I just can't do it. I had brought a 6-pack, and let him have one, and I hadn't tried it yet. He was like, "Have you tried that?" I was like, "No." And he's like, it's maybe the worst beer I've ever had.
Really?
And yeah, it was. I just tried to buy the local or whatever.
Special brew.
Oh, it was god awful. So I kept leaving him one. I put one in his cup holder in his van, and just like. So now we joke about it. He's like, "Hey, do you have any more terrible beer for me to try?"
All right.
But he does bring some pretty delicious stuff out there. So.
Well, here's
another good reason.
Here's one last story that I think from the week that I wanted to share that we could wrap up after. So at Jazz Fest, you've had your celebrity story about Bill Murray looking over your shoulder, and he's, you go to do a sneaky selfie, and he says that's going to cost you $1 and all that.
Right.
You know that a lot of the people who are with these acts, you might not recognize them, but they're vital to the show going on. They're wandering around, and some of them are your customers. Yeah. Well, I was having Wi-Fi issues and data issues with this sale with this particular customer. And I knew it was getting close to one of the big headliners. Chris Stapleton was performing. And
oh, cool.
And this guy was buying some of our work in our booth, and I couldn't get the sale to go through. And he's being really calm and everything. And I finally get it all worked out, and we get the sale, and we talk about shipping it. And he says, well, that's okay. He says, I'm not going to be home for a while. I'm on tour with Chris Stapleton. I'm like, whoa. Chris Stapleton? You mean the guy who's like supposed to be performing right now? And he's like, uh-huh. Like, holy shit, my Wi-Fi signal might have been slowing down this guy from getting up on the stage. I don't know what he does for him. He could be a producer. He could be whatever, but.
Did you look at the band? You should look at band shots.
Well, there's a good point. I could do that. I didn't.
Yeah, see who he is.
Yeah, I thought that might be a little cyber stalker-ish.
It's a celebrity. You're supposed to. Okay. That's what you're supposed to do. That's I Mark Ruffalo. Yeah. Met him. Did I tell that story or no?
I remember a story about the Hulk because I was like, Mark, never.
Oh yeah, I told that one. No, that's okay. You never know who you're going to run into at Jazz Fest.
Yeah,
I think I've told all my celebrity stories. Big leaguing Steve Miller was my favorite, though.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I love that.
Anyway, cut back to Douglas does a very good job editing, folks. He can just take my stories and be like, he knows exactly when I told all this shit. But
what you don't know is that there's a lot of times Will starts talking and he says, as an aside that can get cut, he says, did I tell this story on the podcast? And I'll say, why, yes, sir. It was on episode 5 on season 3.
All right. There's been too many. Try going to dinner with artists anymore. I don't know. And not being able to remember whether you've told your shit and seeing people glaze over because they've already listened to it on the show. Oh. Like, I know I haven't even met you. How do you know all my good stories?
Right. Well, shout out to Amy Flynn. We're in the parking lot. My first show out. I'm super excited to be on the road and to start seeing people. And she asks, how have you been? And then before I could tell her, she says, you don't need to tell me how you've been. I've been listening to the podcast.
Yeah, womp, womp. Well, Douglas, let's get out there and make some new stories, shall we? I'll see you on the road, and I'll see you soon.
Sounds good.
See you folks out there. Thanks again for tuning in and for all your kind words when we're at shows. That definitely keeps us going. We appreciate that.
It does. This has been a tight week. And honestly, this might have been a week where I would have said, I just don't have time to do this. But the people who came and talked to me over the past 2 weeks and said how important the show is to them made me say, I think we're going to try and squeeze this in. So thank you, Will, for making time.
We're doing it for the people.
Doing it for the people. All right.
All right, buddy. See you on the road.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
This podcast is brought to you by the National Association of Independent Artists. The website is naiaartists.org.
Also sponsored by Zapplication. That's zapplication.org. And while you're at it, find us on social media and engage in these conversations.
Be sure to subscribe to this podcast to be notified when we release new episodes.
Oh, and if you like the show, we'd love it if you would give us your 5-star rating and offer up your most creative review on your podcast streaming service. See you next time.